Okay, our next speaker is Ilona Vandergriff. She's a professor of German at San Francisco State University. Her research interests include first and second language use, computer-mediated communication, and pragmatics. And she's the author of the book Second Language Discourse in the Digital World, Linguistic and Social Practices in and Beyond the Network Classroom, which is from 2016. She's also published a wide variety of articles in a number of journals. I'm just going to cite a few of them so you can see the range. Calico Journal, Critical Approaches to Discourse Analysis Across Disciplines, Humor, the International Journal of Humor Research, the Journal of Pragmatics, Language Learning and Technology, Language at Internet, and Teaching German, Die Unterrichtspraxis. A little bit close to my heart there. Her talk today is on L2 identity and equitable participation in digital social spaces. Please join me in welcoming Ilona Vandergriff.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chantal. And good morning to everyone. Good morning to everyone here, and good morning to everyone listening in virtually. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me. I'm honored to be here and honored to share my work with you. My work recently has focused quite a bit on L2 digital practice outside the classroom. So what happens when language learners, second language learners, become second language users? It matters not only that second language users engage with others, but also how they do so. Is this working okay? Okay. Okay. Learning transforms identity, and language learners develop their second language identity when they become legitimate speakers in a community of practice. Yet, a person's identity is based only in part on how they see themselves. It's also based on how they think others see them. In other words, identity is very much a social phenomenon and emerges out of the interaction between the individual and the community. Second language learners can only become second language users when the community ratifies them as such. Okay, let me go. Sorry.
You should have a clicker right next to you.
Oh, that's one. Okay. In my contribution to examining digital inequity, I analyze a single Reddit forum discussion on error correction. It's a descriptive study that shows that one of the mechanisms of social gatekeeping in social media is a prescriptivist agenda that positions second language participants as second language learners rather than users, and that stigmatizes English usage that is considered foreign. I argue that with its prescriptive agenda, the Reddit community denies second language users equitable participation. At the same time, Reddit also offers the affordances to challenge and to negotiate the norms and practices that produce inequity, and it rewards second language users when they do so. So a bit of background here. In SLA in general and in the second language identity literature, computer-mediated communicative contexts are by and large found to be welcoming spaces where language learners express themselves more freely than in the second language classroom. Is this working okay? Yes, okay. Okay, good. So in L1, L2 digital interaction, second language learners often self-identify as such, a practice that has been well documented. For example, they may explicitly label themselves as language learners, or they may discursively orient to language expertise, and specifically to the language expertise differential between participants. By positioning themselves as not so competent English users through self-deprecating comments such as, "My English is so poor," users negotiate their identity such that they will be accepted into the community. as legitimate participants. And these negative self-evaluations have been shown to constitute a key gambit for negotiating such membership. My data comprises a Reddit forum discussion, specifically a sub-Reddit, containing over 4,000 comments on a 256-word post entitled, "No, I'm not sorry for my bad English." The post was published on September 26, 2011, on what is now considered old Reddit. The platform has gone through a change. So just a little bit of background about Reddit. We've already heard a little bit about it, also from Jonathan Reinhardt. Reddit is a social media platform, and it's the world's most popular online message board. It currently has over 100 million users a month in 196 countries. Compared to other social media, Reddit protects anonymity of its users, but to some extent. So it has pseudonymity. So without user profiles or pictures, Redditors are identified by user IDs only. And what differentiates Reddit from a microblog like Twitter is that the content is organized and it's curated by the Reddit community. Items are upvoted or downvoted. Reddit labels itself as a community where people can create subreddits, so sub-communities of Reddit, which are independent and moderated by a team of volunteers. The corpus data were published in the subreddit strand called Self-Reddit, quote, "a place to put self-posts for discussion, questions, and anything else you like." We talk a bit about my analytical frameworks here and the methods. I'm using Buckles and Hall's 2005 framework for analyzing the discursive construction of identity. I look at second language participation, identity, and investment. The research questions are: 1, how do second language users position themselves as second language users? 2, how are the second language users positioned by first language users in ways that either grant or reject claims to second language resources? And 3, how do second language users ratify other positioning? How do they challenge or contest it? So the analysis of positioning is based on both indexical processes, on the use of explicit labels and categories, and on stance taking. Here is the original post. In this original post, the user describes the Reddit community as unwelcoming to second language users. Specifically, the English as a foreign language participant complains about members of the Reddit community who, quote, bitch about some few grammar mistakes, end quote. So I'm going to read it to you now. Hey, my name is Andreas. I'm 16 years old and I live in Germany. As you can see, I speak English. I learned it in school as a first language after German since I was 11 years old. English is a cool language, but it is also hard to learn. Since there's no German Reddit, I have to adapt to this English-speaking community. What I noticed is that there are a lot of Redditors who just wait for a spelling mistake to bitch about because they earn karma. I think this is sad because Reddit should be a community for everybody and also for those who aren't so good in English, especially to all the American grammar Nazis. I bet less than 2% of you can speak German as good as a 5-year-old kid in Germany. The German vocabulary of most Americans consists of approximately 5 words like Heil Hitler, Nein, Deutsches Reich, Mein Führer, Blitzkrieg. Sometimes it sucks to be a German Redditor because our country gets insulted and mocked so often, and we can't say anything against this rubbish because of our cruel history. Please be a little bit more kind with us, not only with Germans, I mean all non-English speaking Redditors, and don't don't bitch about some few grammar mistakes. It's okay to complain when somebody has grammar skills like Yoda, but please stop beefing about some minor grammar spelling issues. You have to accept that the English language is a world language. Thank you. The data I analyze are interesting in a number of ways. First of all, the original post is unusual because it provides a rich source for second language user perceptions, experiences, and beliefs about the specific digital social space of Reddit here, and because it challenges Reddit's prevailing norms and dominant ideologies. It's also interesting because there's much uptake on this from the Reddit community, both in support and in opposition to Andrea's position. Fellow Redditors give the original post nearly 19,000 upvotes and only slightly fewer, that is 17,585 downvotes, and they post over 4,000 comments. I first consider the research questions. So Andreas uses his second language resources skillfully in the presentation of self. In a striking departure from Reddit community norms, he introduces himself by name and age. Specifically, Andreas uses indexical linkages to macro-level categories such as nation-state affiliation, as well as cultural and linguistic affiliations, and to subject positions such as youth. Moreover, Andreas indexes his identity through his linguistic choices, for example, hey, the smiley emoticon at the end, and bitch about as an example here of his usage. And finally, his stances on a range of objects, including World English, index his identity. In conjunction with the comments of the community members, which I'll talk about in a minute, the original post also provides insights into how he, as a second language user, has been positioned by first language users on the site. He describes how the assumptions and judgments about his identity, the ascribed identity, is a threat to his inhabited identity, using Blommert's framework here, 2006. He feels marginalized in the community in two ways: as a second language participant and as a German. He says, I think it is sad. While he feels powerless to contest being positioned as a German, quote, we can't say anything, end quote, he vigorously contests the deficiency-orienting second language learner identity which others ascribe to him. Instead, he positions himself as a user, the identity he claims for himself, claiming, L2 resources, and he defines the L2 on Reddit not as a national variety, but as a world language. I now turn to the discussion, the comments on Andrea's original post, and I highlight three themes that emerge: language use, power and dominance, and the imagined community. Communities of practice have a shared repertoire or code. Code is the term Herring uses in her framework, 2007. Linguistic prescriptions on Reddit are primarily concerned with morphosyntactic aspects of grammar and with spelling. Lexical, textual, or pragmatic aspects rarely come up by contrast. This is in line with linguistic prescriptivism generally. Andrea's post suggests that error correction and grammar trolling are ubiquitous on Reddit. Error correction can be a form of social gatekeeping. It interrupts the discussion. It shifts participant attention from one discourse level to another, from the propositional to the meta-linguistic level, from meaning to form. The interruption derails and, in fact, often ends the original discussion, effectively silencing the user. Now, correction can also be used to silence others more deliberately, and this is what data extract 2 suggests here. So I can't come up with a coherent argument, better comment on their grammar. So in this way, grammar correction can be weaponized to eliminate the opposition. Focusing now on power, here specifically the dominance of native speakers. Error correction is often associated with dominance. From user descriptions such as, quote, bashing of people or, quote, belittlement, we can infer that error corrections are often insensitive, harsh, demeaning. In their comments, generally Reddit users distance themselves from such insensitive corrections, suggesting they're not the ones doing that, but they grant first language users control over linguistic resources, asymmetrical control over linguistic resources. And the community largely rejects Andreas' position as a second language user and repositions him as a second language learner. From their perspective, second language learning involves a process of assimilation into the linguistic conventions of the dominant discourse communities. And from that point of view, any error shows that that process is not yet complete. Here are 2 data extracts that show that position. So data extract 3 here, your written English does not define who you are, but it's also a skill. There are others who are better at it, the same way that you're better than them at German. However, you are on an English-speaking website, as the saying goes, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. As a non-native speaker, get used to the criticism, get over the fact that they get karma points out of it, and get better so they can stop. The only thing they get out of criticizing you is imaginary internet points. You eventually vastly improve your skills. So linguistic correction is viewed and presented here as helpful, especially helpful to the second language user, and it's intended to benefit the user. And those who adapt to the dominant norms are expected to show the right attitude. So extract 4 assigns humility as a desirable characteristic to second language users. Being sorry is about humility. I agree with your statement, but I think humility is good. You can be sorry about your poor English while being awesome and speaking, writing German very well. Sorry about the Hitler stuff. I wish my fellow countrymen were not such assholes. Hope you have a good day, friend. So from this perspective, self-deprecating comments such as, I'm sorry for my bad English, would optimally position second language users for negotiating community membership. This is also suggested in much of the literature about this, for example, Barton and Lee, 2013. So these extracts illustrate how judgmental approaches to language use are rationalized, how they display power, and how they affirm native speaker hegemony. If native speaker competence is viewed as the gold standard, then second language errors are highly stigmatized. In fact, Reddit users appear united in their attitude that first language errors stigmatize the user as uneducated or lazy. So let me make that clear again, because I think I said it wrong. So it's the first language errors that are highly stigmatized, even more than second language errors, and they are stigmatized as uneducated or lazy. By contrast, second language errors carry a different stigma. They are stigmatized as foreign, in need of correction so that language skills improve. So if first language errors and second language errors come with different sanctions, it's important for the community to distinguish between first language and second language post. And it turns out that in the pseudonymous text-only environment of Reddit users, they often find it difficult to distinguish between second language and first language errors. Indeed, many comments suggest that a quick and easy fix for Andrea's complaint would be differential marking of first and second language messages. So here is data extract 5. Here's the problem. People don't know your German. When I see someone posting on an English-speaking forum, I'm going to assume it's their first language. This also means I'm going to assume they're dumb if they speak broken English. All you need to do is mention that it's your second language and no rational person will mind. That being said, I'm currently trying and failing to learn German right now, so I know what you're going through. It's a pain in the ass to learn a new language, and I have a ton of respect for anyone who even attempts to speak English. So overall, there appears to be widespread, really surprisingly widespread consensus that marking allows the community to interpret the error correctly, indexing them as either foreign or dumb user errors. So this way, only dumb users would be excluded. In the suggested fix, marking second language contributions clearly, two ideologies collude. Two ideologies collude: linguistic prescriptivism and native speaker hegemony. So this fix that is suggested circumvents the larger issue, of course. Whose community is Reddit? Andreas argues that the community belongs to everyone who is competent in English, in world English as he sees it, as he positions himself as a legitimate second language user. Reddit itself describes itself as a home to thousands of communities, suggesting perhaps equitable participation. Other Reddit users echo Andrea's concept of Reddit as a global community based on World English, but still by and large affirm native speaker hegemony. So extract 7 illustrates bad English as a slippery slope that, if left unchecked, would eventually threaten community values. So this is stupid. If you're on an English-speaking website, then don't be surprised if someone corrects your English. And the lines here indicate the quote from Andrea's original post. You have to accept that the English language is a world language, is the quote. And then the response, yeah, that doesn't mean it's okay to screw it up. It's not belittlement if someone corrects you. It's just getting it correct. And then you make a stupid comparison of how most Americans can't speak German. That's because we don't learn it for 7 years like you learn English. Why would you even make that comparison? It's completely irrelevant to anything. Again, the quote from Andreas: Reddit should be a community for everybody and also for those who aren't so good in English. And the response: it is a community for everybody. We just want you to speak the language correctly. This would turn into 4chan or worse, Facebook, if we didn't correct bad grammar and spelling. So from this point of view, the quality of language use is a reflection of the quality of the community. So this diagram sums up the different views of the Reddit community that emerged in the discussion. In a nutshell, the data show how the second language user positions himself and how he's positioned by others, and that reflects the two different views of the community. On the left, it shows the dominant norms and views of second language participants, users who view the Reddit community as an extension of the nation state and believe that Americans have ownership of the community. Because full membership requires control over a code, second language errors, viewed from this perspective as violations of standard American English, keep second language participants on the periphery. In stigmatizing second language errors, two ideologies, namely prescriptivism and native speaker hegemony, collude and they delegitimize and marginalize or even exclude second language users. On the right, when viewed as an act of investing, Andreas Post is repositioning himself as a central member of the community. He claims his second language resources as legitimate capital. Bourdieu's term, 2011, contests the dominance of the native speaker and marks an argument for second language equitable participation. From this perspective, Reddit is a global, multilingual, border-free community where the shared repertoire is not a national variety of English, but world English. It follows then that second language users, like first language users, enjoy full membership and equitable participation. Linguistic prescriptivism is highly prevalent in many digital spaces. I believe there are a few reasons for this, especially with respect to English, the world's most prominent lingua franca. First, because few web spaces have official gatekeepers to defend against the influx of what some view as bad English, there are many self-appointed gatekeepers. Certain features specific to Reddit appear to promote correction. Reddit has a community culture of enforcing norms. It's peer-moderated by volunteers, and it has a prescriptive netiquette. Its so-called Rediquette reads, quote, use proper grammar and spelling. Intelligent discourse requires a standard system of communication. Be open to gentle corrections. End quote. This is the old Rediquette that was relevant at the time the data was collected. Specifically, certain Reddit activities may promote correction. The more discussion and debate there is, the more likely it is that correction is exploited as a way to silence opposing voices, especially when the tone is contentious or sarcastic. Error correction can also be a way to earn karma. And of course, it's a relatively low-cost way because it can be earned without actually engaging with content. And in addition, Reddit users' educational level is above the US average, and prescriptivism is associated with the values of the social and cultural elites. Errors are also more conspicuous in less ephemeral text-dominant spaces like Reddit compared to more ephemeral multimodal environments such as, for example, Instagram stories. So in short, in spite of its open access to second language users from around the globe, the Reddit community has a number of characteristics that encourage error correction and do not make it particularly welcoming to second language users. In light of these, the user downvotes and comments opposing Andreas' position are unsurprising. At the same time, new media also provide new modes of inclusion. Darwin 2017 has talked about this. Reddit's combination of features offers affordances for negotiating and renegotiating community norms that allow Andreas to make his case and be heard. This is because Reddit, unlike Twitter, aggregates information and organizes discussions on themes and subreddits. While it's not clear to what extent his original post, is able to influence anyone, change anyone's mind, the data show that he has considerable social power in the community. The fact that he can assert his identity as a second language user. He can gain the attention of over 35,000 plus community members. He receives more upvotes than downvotes while challenging long-standing traditional usage norms. And he can prompt meaningful discussion. All of these, I believe, provide strong evidence that second language users can resist and challenge practices that promote inequity and exclusion. To examine the privileging and marginalizing of second language identities and to understand the new modes of inclusion and exclusion in digital spaces, we do need more comparative studies, I believe, of the digital practices in different communities, especially in naturalistic extramural contexts. Haring's faceted classification scheme for computer-mediated discourse, which includes characteristics such as language proficiency, power, identity, and participation, could provide a useful analytical framework for comparative studies across a range of digital spaces. The analysis also shows that an emic perspective can validate relevant features of analysis. Norms, values, attitudes, or ideologies are usually hidden unless they clash with those of others. And in my contribution, I have shown how the negotiation of norms of error correction makes beliefs, values, and ideologies visible. Moreover, the emic perspective this analysis has taken complements computer-mediated discourse analysis because, as illustrated, it can explain how various factors of analysis interact. So how the different dimensions of analysis interact. For example, how norms enact ideologies. Second language users in extramural contexts can easily move in and move out of digital social spaces. They can engage with others and even more easily disengage with other users. They can invest in, but even more easily disinvest from shared practices. So in order to prepare classroom learners to be invested, like Andreas, we need to develop a more complete understanding of what actually happens when second language users connect with others in diverse social spaces, especially outside of institutional language learning concepts. And I believe a better understanding of that can help develop language learning curricula for digital literacy. Thank you.